October Day in 2000, the occasion of the first reunion for my mother's side of the family, the DeFioris. At midday, 3 generations of us were gathered in Lower Manhattan at the slip of the ferry that would take us to Ellis Island. Helicopters hovered overhead, flinging Wall Street movers and shakers from landing pad to living pad. The Twin Towers were still standing tall in their Manhattan grandiosity. Just in the corner of my eye, I could see 30 Maiden Lane, a building that I had worked on in the summer of 1965 as a proud member of the Union of Common Laborers, Hod Carriers, and Bricklayers Assistants. The building was being torn down, and I had a sudden sense of time's arrow, of the young man I had been just yesterday, now propelled into the onrushing future. Just as the ferry was sloshing in, the waiting crowd was suddenly dotted with color, as if we had been caught in a ticker tape parade. Jostling with us to get on the ferry was the All-Italy Carabinieri Band, in full regalia. Epaulets bloomed like sunflowers from every shoulder. Gold buttons gleamed. The sunlight bounced from tuba to trumpet to timpani, a visual preview of the program to come. For it was Columbus Day weekend, and the Carabinieri had arrived from Italy not only to march in the parade, but to play a special engagement at Ellis Island in honor of all the Italian Americans whose families, including the DeFioris and Favarinis, had there taken their first steps on American soil. The presence of the Carabinieri only enhanced the feeling I had of holding my place in time, securely within concentric commemorative domains of family, work, nationality, and self-identification. I saw myself with past and future stretched out on either side of me, the past represented by generations of Italian ancestors, now colorfully augmented by the Carabinieri, and the future materialized in the hovering helicopters and secured by the dreams of my children. I was father and son, student and teacher, laborer and professor, Italian and American. My temporally disparate selves had never felt so much like oneself. To quote from Remembrance of Things Past, time, colorless and inapprehensible. Time, so that I was almost able to see it and touch it, materialized itself. Reminiscence number 4, remembering teachers. The account I gave at the beginning of this talk of how I became a student of memory, a eureka moment I called it, needs correction. It is evident even to me that what I characterized as an academic light bulb was a slowly burning candle, a lifetime of memories steadily suffusing my professional pursuits. Shortly before publishing my book on theater and memory in 2008, I came across a memory-rich piece I had written 30 years earlier, confronting me with the fact that the seeds of memory were planted deeper than I thought. The piece was a sort of funeral oration in honor of the acting coach and director I had at Fordham, and I'd like to read you a bit of it as a prelude to the final section of my address today, which is about remembering teachers. So I'm quoting myself now. In March of 1978, the New York Times carried the obituary of Vaughn Deering, who directed plays at Fordham College after a distinguished career as a professional actor and drama coach. I'd been thinking a lot lately about Vaughn, partly because his death coincided with my midlife rummage sale of outworn values and tarnished reflections. I guess I've discovered Vaughn to be among my treasured and genuine keepsakes. When I was a student actor under Vaughn, he was in his 70s, that's old, and he spoke in a gruff and gravelly baritone which he could turn honey-toned at will. It was a glorious acting and speaking voice, fashioned, I'd guess, after that of his mentor, Robert Mantell, one of the great Shakespearean actors of the early 20th century. Vaughan's face was without deep lines, except around the mouth. He had a wide smile that did double duty, as a reward for a bit carried off well, and as a mirthless mask for his displeasure at an actor's inattention or laziness. He wore a battered gray fedora and a smudged and hilariously rumpled gray gabardine suit. Spring on the Rose Hill campus saw him change the weight and color of his suit. The wrinkles and smudges were apparently transferable, and his fedora for a Panama. What one remembers most clearly, though, about Vaughan's physical appearance is his walk, when his feet and legs, which were always wrapped in crusty ancient ace bandages, weren't paining him too much. His walk was a forward motion, soft shoe. You could always hear the scrape and brush of his feet upon the dusty floor of old Collins Auditorium before you saw him. No matter what his condition, or the condition of the world at large, Vaughan never missed a rehearsal. We rehearsed in blizzards, and in heat waves, during subway strikes, on religious holidays, and on November 22nd, 1963. Vaughan taught us the great, beautiful lie, which sustains theater people when it's 3 a.m. and the coffee's gone and the director wants to run it one more time, that there is nothing more important than the art of the theater. The greatest part of the legacy he passed on to us derived from his proud years with the Robert B. Mantell Shakespearean Company, for which he played 38 roles in less than 6 full seasons. The style of acting Vaughan learned and taught to us was bold, broad, and romantic. At its best, the style was a treasury of grand scraps of business and glorious readings, effects likely to seem out of place on any canvas smaller than Shakespeare. These jewels, shaped like diamonds over the centuries of stage tradition, were passed proudly from one actor to another. Classic bits, like Hamlet holding up the cross-shaped sword, hilt of his sword, to fend off the ghost. Vaughan taught less by the Socratic method than by demonstration. Once, directing us in Julius Caesar, he did for us Casca's first act account of the offering of the crown to Caesar. He hobbled up the steps to the stage, with 2 or 3 of us helping him, and planted himself dead center, half open to the audience, left foot pointing downstage, the ace bandage unraveling out from under his pants leg. Under the work lights, his face was pale and sallow, and half covered in the shadow of his fedora. Left hand in jacket pocket, he didn't budge an inch for the 100 lines, but merely turned now to Brutus on one side and Cassius on the other. The lines poured from him smoothly, like honey from a jar. Brutus and Cassius were enveloped. His voice rose and fell in soft waves. His speech rhythms were dynamic and complex, with unexpected, short pauses. He raised and lowered his eyebrows slowly, as if they were heavy. He allowed himself the luxury of touching a handkerchief to his mouth when reporting the stinking breath of the crowd. He smiled mirthlessly, and the final jest, "If I be alive, and your dinner be worth the eating," left a palpable hollowness in the pit of your stomach. Or at least, that's the way I remember it.